Peace and blessings, family. This is a moment today where we have come on here to pay homage to our ancestors who unfortunately was massacred in the Tulsa massacre that occurred on May the 31st and June 1st of 1921. There was a mob of European residents, many of them deputized and given weapons by city officials, attacked the Africans and indigenous people that were residents there and business owners of the Greenwood district in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so we want to pay homage to them on today. We want to remember them. I believe that today is befitting to be able to do this as a memorial to our ancestors who were murdered. And so we must, as indigenous people, keep in mind that it is cultural for us to pay homage to our loved ones. Just to bring back to your attention, family, that we were separated on various slave plantations. We came over here on the same boat, and even if we didn't come over here on the same boat, I always say this, we are in the same boat as it relates to racism. I want to say peace and blessings to Aunt Viv. Thank you so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. We are one. We have the same issue. For those who do not know, my queen and I both have Tasalagi, which some of you know as Cherokee blood in us. So our ancestors, she and I, and some of you as well that's tuning in, our ancestors were already here. Okay. Literally people that as dark as myself and as dark as my queen were already on this continent. And as time go on, as this is the age of information, these truths are being revealed even the more as time goes on as it relates to who we really are and where our people come from. And we all know, those of us who are in the midst of the know, we know what actually has occurred as it relates to our history. I want to say peace and blessings to you, Brother Jeff Scholar. So it would be remiss of us for us to, again, pay homage to individuals who lost their life and wasn't fighting for us. Okay? They did not die for us. Okay? They did not fight for liberation of the indigenous people of this continent, whether your ancestors came from Africa or were already here. It was no fight to liberate us. Okay? And also remember that Memorial Day is for fallen veterans who died while they were serving. So keep that in mind as well. So please don't say happy Memorial Day to me because I'm still alive. All right. I want you to understand that. I appreciate, you trying to recognize me as a veteran. I'm a retired Marine. I served for a total of 20 years, but I have to give you the historicity of Memorial Day. It is for falling veterans who were serving. Okay. Those who served and they transitioned when they were serving, be it war or they transitioned during their time of serving. Okay, it is not for veterans that are alive today. Veterans Day is to do that. Okay, Veterans Day is to celebrate all veterans, whether passed on or whether serving. So we got to understand the history, because a lot of us, we go around and we saying these things, and I know you don't mean any harm by it. Okay, but this is the reason why a history lesson is very important. So we getting ready to go into the video content. All together is going to be roughly a total of at least 30 minutes, okay, total. So just stand by and we're going to look at some video content of our ancestors. And here we go.
Some African-American communities are prospering, like the residents of Greenwood, a suburb of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Here, former slaves were given land after the Civil War, and this rare footage shows the thriving town they built. A remarkable Baptist pastor named Solomon Sir Jones is the pioneering filmmaker. His footage was lost for more than 50 years. Jones captures the bustling life of Greenwood, which could be any American small town. But Tulsa's whites don't like what they see. In May 1921, after a black man is accused of assaulting a white woman, a white mob rampages through the city. For a night and a day, they loot and burn Greenwood. The Fox News crew captures the only surviving footage. It is the bloodiest racial massacre in American history, leaving nearly 300 dead.
It was a horrific time for our nation.
It's American history, it's Oklahoma history, it's the history of the city.
An event so terrible, many history books have shamefully left it out.
I was surprised to learn how much my kids did not know.
They're talking about the 1921 Tulsa Race Riot, or as many know it, the Tulsa Race Massacre.
This was our nation's worst race riot.
Michelle Brown is with the Greenwood Cultural Center. Her office sits on the very spot where nearly 40 acres of vibrant, prosperous property was destroyed, and at least 300 innocent African Americans were senselessly killed. It's a repulsive, violent act that is still affecting lives today.
Having not received any type of reparations, just now being at a point where we are truly acknowledging this history, there's a lot of historical trauma that they are experiencing.
Dr. Carlos Hill teaches African and African American studies at the University of Oklahoma.
What had been one of the wealthiest communities, most educated communities, most peaceful communities in the country was destroyed in less than 18 hours.
The hatred overflowed on May 31st, 1921, after a young black man named Dick Rowland entered the Drexel building in downtown Tulsa and stepped aboard an elevator being operated by a white woman named Sarah Page.
Dick Rowland walks into the elevator, Sarah Page is there, the elevator door closes, there's a scream, the door opens again, and she runs out.
Within hours, Rowland had been accused of assault, even rape. He's arrested and placed in the city's jail. Newspapers in town begin to run their version of the story.
Newspapers in Tulsa begin to report an assault and even a rape.
As the story spread through the white neighborhoods, so did the anger.
And there's talk of a lynching, right? Dick Rowland's going to be taken from the jail and lynched that night.
A small group of armed African-American men go twice to speak with the sheriff, offering their support to help guard the city jail from the angry massing mob. The sheriff declines both times, but as the men are leaving the second time, a white person confronts the group.
And it tries to take away a gun from one of the men.
The African-American men stand their ground.
And a melee ensues. The gun is fired. A white person is shot. And from that point, as we would say, all hell breaks loose.
The African-American men retreat down the road to the Greenwood district.
And they are followed very closely by other white men.
Gunfire continues to be exchanged between the groups.
When daybreak came, there's an even larger group of whites that have sort of mobilized. And at daybreak, they enter into the Greenwood district.
What was a neighborhood of intellect, family values, some of the most successful African Americans in the country, became a war zone.
Began to burn, loot, kill innocent people, bystanders.
African Americans caught in the violent racist attack were killed, their livelihoods wiped from the map.
Their community was destroyed, their homes were destroyed, their businesses were destroyed, their churches were destroyed, their schools were destroyed.
Since then, Tulsa has been left with a scar that is yet to heal, wounds that have caused distrust of city leaders and allowed for systemic racist policies to dictate the lives of African Americans in Tulsa.
So the way that they feel about the police, the way they feel about city officials, the way they feel about being citizens of Tulsa.
Michelle Brown says only in learning the full history of the Tulsa Race Massacre can one begin to see the pain it has caused Tulsans for a century.
When we realize and acknowledge the history, we understand some of what they are experiencing emotionally and mentally and even spiritually.
That's why having the knowledge and courage to educate Tulsa's youth about our history is critical.
For a lot of kids, when they think of topics like segregation, they think of the deep, deep South, and they don't really connect it to Oklahoma and Tulsa.
Shrita Ashley teaches history at Edison Preparatory School. She says educating students about the race massacre helps them self-reflect and grow as young adults.
It made it more real for them because they could connect to places they knew in town, parts of town that they had lived in the past or live in currently, and understand why there's so much difference between different segments of Tulsa.
But having these conversations has proved difficult for many adults, even teachers.
They did not feel comfortable talking about this part of history in their classrooms. They didn't know how to discuss it and address it.
Brown saying many educators she's mentored lacked enough knowledge to facilitate meaningful conversations.
They did not know enough about it to be able to educate their students about it.
For Shrita Ashley, the educational process for teachers begins with self-awareness.
And be okay with accepting that you've done things wrong, and it's okay. You know, you're a person, you're a human, and you realize this hasn't been working, and it's okay to change that.
Saying it's important to be okay with being uncomfortable, knowing students have a safe place to learn, discuss, and express themselves about the terrible events during the Tulsa Race Massacre.
So I think by having kids exposed to teachers who can guide them and facilitate those types of discussions helps the kids see how to facilitate those discussions.
They need to be aware of and be able to understand sort of how this issue still impacts them, how it still impacts their community.
That they give students the freedom to respond as openly and honestly as they would like. Give them the opportunity to express themselves.
The hope is that by educating students about the Tulsa Race Massacre and the lasting effects still resonating in Tulsa today,
the biggest strides and the biggest changes are definitely going to come in having kids grow up and take in those positions of power. They become the teachers, they become the leaders.
that they can grow into more well-informed adults that can create positive, lasting change in Tulsa.
Most of these students, as history has shown us, will be here. They'll be leaders in our city, and they can see where these problems started, and they can figure out where to go from here.
Hoping one day the deadly racist attack will serve as a reminder of our evil past, but also highlight the qualities of African Americans who endured such terrible acts of violence and oppression.
It was an attempted expulsion that was unsuccessful. And I think probably the thing that Black people are most proud about in relationship to the Tulsa Race Riot or the massacre is the fact that the community was rebuilt.
That African Americans in Tulsa would not break to the pressure of racism and injustice.
It's a testament to the strength of the community. It's a testament to the high quality of the people who were adversely impacted by the race riot.
And the importance of learning about our history so the city can heal, ultimately making Tulsa a place everyone feels welcome, that everyone can be proud to call home.
It makes a society better. That's why we believe in public education, right? Because an educated public leads us to all have a better quality of life.
And so I think it's more than just a history of violence and destruction. It's also this really story about courage and persistence and resilience.
A few things that I remembered because we were all,
Agreed to take off my mask so that you can see my mouth.
yes.
So I want to say
Yeah.
no problem. No, happy to do it.
Yeah.
We want to talk about the Tulsa Race Massacre.
Yeah, yes.
And it's interesting because there's a lot of people who don't even know what happened that day.
That's right.
And we are blessed enough to be in your company for you all to teach us a little bit about what happened. Mother Fletcher, may I ask, what do you remember from that night?
Remember the noise of, guns shooting, people running and screaming, and noise from the air like an airplane, and just so many things was disturbing, and fires burning and smelling smoke. And then we could hear someone going through the neighborhood that everybody should leave town, that they were killing all the black people. So, that was frightening. So, yeah.
What did your mother tell you about what was happening? How did she explain it to you?
Well, in parts, it's just so much that she said about it. But a few things that I remembered because we were all frightened very much. That meant everybody was in a hurry to get up and move and leave town, to keep from being injured. So she was saying about how everybody was the I don't know who was doing all of this, but people were getting shot and beaten and just rushed out of their homes, and so many uh, things was happening to everybody that encourages all of us to follow suit with what they said. Yeah, so to me, I guess, it just kind of stayed with you. It's something you don't forget. You think about that all the time. Look like every evening, I kind of have a feeling it's time to run, and no telling what might happen, but I'm sure it won't happen again.
Even today,
Yeah,
you have that nervous feeling?
oh, yes, sure. Oh, yes. I hardly sleep nights, and look like I lost my appetite. I only eat a few times, and it's just always that they don't ever leave your mind, not mine. That's something I've been thinking about for the last 100 years.
It's a big year
Yeah,
for
yeah.
people in this community to remember what happened.
And
When you think about that night, do you remember seeing black people killed?
well, sure, that too was getting killed. Yes, people was getting killed, and it seemed like they were breaking in people's homes and taking out some of their valuables, or I don't know what you could go off with, but just ransacking the neighborhood, damaging most everything that the black people had.
Did you see black bodies in the street?
Black bodies in the street. That's right. That's right. Yes. I mean, if people got injured, I don't know if they were all dead, but they were laying out, not able to get up and move or get out of the way of whatever was happening.
And how old were you, Mother Fletcher, that
A,
night?
a little between 6 and 7 years old.
Were you able to take any of your things with you, your dolls?
Oh, well, I don't know about the pets, but our parents gathered up all the children, say I had, and gathered us up to get us out of town. And I don't remember now whether we had any pets or not, but it, all the children were safely carried away.
And when you think about the way that that night has affected your life, how do you think that night affected the rest of your life?
Oh, it does. I don't know, looked like I didn't get the education I should have had. And, we've just kind of sat back and had to start all over again about the parents making a living to raise their children and time to spend in going to school. So many years I didn't go to school a full term, so that I didn't get the education that I should have had. enough to make a decent living, like working and earning a big salary. That
And when your family fled, where did they go?
we left and went to a little town called Claremore, I think. Yeah.
Do you think that the city should recompensate you for what you lost? Do you think
Well,
the government should pay you back for what you
Yes, yes, I do. Not only me, everyone I think that was injured at during that time should receive something, including my family and others. Yes, yes, I think so.
lost? And what would that look like? Does that look like opportunity for your grandkids? Does it look like money?
Yes. And they'll get better educations and better jobs and better living conditions and, so many things now that families can enjoy doing that we can't afford.
What do you think this city would have looked like if the race riot had not happened?
Oh, it would have been beautiful because the street there, speaking of Black Wall Street, everybody was proud of that. It had stores and churches and school. Well, I don't know about I don't think it was a schoolhouse on the street, but they had, you know, everything nice that the neighborhood needed for their family. Yeah.
Mr. Ellis, may I ask you, how do you think your life has been impacted by the massacre?
My life has been back like this. I can sleep at night. I have to have light. I love light. How it impacted me, like when I got old enough to marry and raise a family, that's when, yeah, dawned on me so much. It was like you was afraid to ask for a job, but you didn't take a good job. Finally, I got a job. I had a wife, and I raised 7 children, 3 girls and 4 boys. It was hard for me. My wife wasn't able to work. Back in 1943, 42, I got married, and I had my first son, Rudy Jr. He was born. I went in the United States Army in 1943. 1943, I just had a young son, baby, and back then he was drafted into the Army. And when I was drafted into the Army, we had a segregated army, a black army and a white army. And I went through that for 2.5 years. It was terrible. I mean, they like a lot of guys got medals for what they did. I went over. I went in. I was drafted, and they sent me out of the United States over in Indian Burma and China.
I'd like to go back to something that you said.
Okay.
You said, sir, that you still have nightmares. And
Yeah.
Mother Fletcher, you said you have trouble sleeping. What are those nightmares about? What do you dream of?
I just dream of what my sister told me. I dream of all what happened back here. I wake up about 4 times a night. And some nights I say woke say 30, 40 minutes so I lay back down. It sticks in my mind. And then like I went to service and same thing. I put my life I put my life on the line for my country. And I was just looking to survive that. Nothing.
Lucky.
And back in those days, black people, even when I raised my family, we worked for like you work 10 hours a day for $1, maybe 12 hours.
It wasn't fair.
What's that?
It wasn't fair.
I didn't get a chance to get a. I only got a chance to get a 12th grade diploma. That's after I got out of school. I didn't get no chance to go to college. I had to work.
So this, I mean, this affected you for years.
They knew. The person never forgets that. It's not been easy. I'm 100 years old past. We looking for justice. I think we should have justice for all of them.
Hmm.
It's so terrible. We have built the United States. The black people do it. We don't get no. We don't get no credit for that. I'm looking for better things in life. I hope before I leave this world. It's been rough.
Miss Fletcher, what do you think about what your brother just said? Do you, when you have those nightmares, what do you think about?
Well, the same thing. So that never leaves your mind now. You want to know if something happens, it stays with me the rest of your life, And you're in fear that it might happen again. It may not be the same way, but something different. But you always, as he said, you can't sleep. Look like instead of having a pleasant dream, that the dream turns out to be something like that about, the danger we were in and if it'll ever happen again and all of that.
Do you think the people who drove you out of Tulsa should be held accountable?
Well, the people are, yes, who's responsible for doing it? We think so. I think everybody should have a share of that. Not that it'll bring back the feeling, but it would make us comfortable. Especially me, since I'm in need of everything like transportation and homes and cars and different things, I would like to own. I don't have now. So,
because it takes a lot to rebuild when something has been taken.
Yes,
something has been burned, right?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
It takes money and time.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Ellis, there was something you said that really struck me. You said that in your life, you're wanting to see justice. When you look at everything happening in America right now, the young unarmed men who are being killed, calls for police reform and justice, how far do you think we've come as a country in your lifetime?
We come a little piece, not too far. We don't plan our come too far yet. We need to do a lot more. They have me what they call a Facebook on and let the mayor. I have a certificate from the mayor for being a good citizen. I have a certificate from. I have 2, 3 things. I can't think of the other ones, but and people call me and won't ask me ideas about the vaccine. I'm on Facebook. They ask me to speak for them and stuff like that. They call me the wisdom man.
The wisdom man. Now, you do sound quite wise.
And I have a lot of friends ask me questions and advice about what's happening right now. It's huge because, well, what do you think about this? They call me up and ask me. I tell them, I think it should be something be done better than it is right now.
And what does that look like? What do you think justice looks like?
Well, I don't know. I guess I don't have an answer for that.
That's okay.
But leave it up there.
I think what it looked like to me, it keeps happening. If we're going to do something about it, well, I think Congress, I understand, I'm looking at the news, I think the president of the United States, they're going to bring that up and they're going to make a law about how the police department does that. We want to change for that. We want the police better trained. That will help some. So Biden is putting in law in the Congress to write a law about that. Mostly about how the police handle things.
especially communities of
Yeah.
color. I wanted to ask you, when you said, Mr. Ellis, that it was difficult finding a job and it made you nervous even
Yes.
to go for a
You
job.
would go for a job and the guy tell you, you fill out the application. Every time a guy says, we'll contact you.
You knew he wasn't going to call?
No.
But what about, if you had seen Mother Fletcher, for example, you saw black bodies in the street, you heard gunshots, you saw white men holding guns, did it make you scared to interact with white people after that?
Yes, really. It sure does. I think if people are brave enough to do that once, they will do it again. So we fear that as we live from day to day.
Do you still have hesitation around interacting with white?
Well, little things happen, that's not very pleasant, but we live with a lot of things like that. It seems like that it's the people of color that seems to be, kind of on the backside of everything. So that's the way we live. That's
You've seen so much in your lifetime. What a blessing to be here and to be able to learn from you. Do you have hope for the future?
I do. I have hope.
Yes, sure. Yes, there is.
Sometimes have tears running.
Beg your pardon?
Sometimes tears be running.
Sometimes it makes you cry. What makes you cry?
When I was in the United States Army, we get on a ship, the black soldiers in the bottom of the ship, in the hull. We go down on the steel ladder about 3 or 4, 5 down, and we was at one in the hull of the ship,
In the very bottom.
the very bottom.
And now, when you look to the future, what gives you hope?
I hope that gets better. I understand. I talked to a lot of military young people, and they said that it's getting a little better. I have friends, young people, I've seen young people kind of hang around me, and I give them a few things what happened back to them, and they said it's getting a little better for black people to be in the United States Army. It's getting a little better.
A little bit better. And Mother Fletcher, what about you?
Well,
What gives you hope for the future?
well, the same as he said, because I had 2 brothers in service, 2 sons in service, and 2 grandsons. 6 of them I bore, the men of my family, and they all have, the same feeling about it. They said that being in service is no fun, so whenever you have to go through with that, well, and we feel, that once they're done that for their country, but they deserve the best of everything. It seems like that's what we always hope for.
Last question. You all have begun this litigation. What is the best case scenario? What do you hope comes out of this lawsuit?
Well, in my case, something's good for me that would make it life more possible, that I can live more comfortable, with things that I need, like, as I said, transportation and taking trips. I mean, a nice big trip, like going to Africa.
That would
Something.
be great. I hope you make it to Africa. That would be great.
Yes, something that I've never done, so that's what we look forward to.
And what about the young people in this community? What do you hope this lawsuit could provide
Lucky and blessed.
Yeah, nice. It's scary. And you don't go to sleep in you know?
And Mother Fletcher, what about you? Is there anything about that night that you'd like to share that I didn't ask?
Well, it's so much that I really don't like to talk about it, you know. And so, but every once in a while, we get into a deep conversation. It, think about it, it haven't been published enough. And so many people don't even know about it. You know, we're talking about this year of the 100-year celebration. Well, some people are wondering what and why. So I think if it was published more, like in a book or on the news or a day to celebrate, well, that would help a lot.
What do you think for people who don't know what the Tulsa Massacre was?
Mhm.
What do you think is the most important thing they should know?
Well, everything that happened then, if it could be published, you know, that would let people know that how things went and how to fear if it ever happens again.
Are you worried about something like this happening again?
Sure, sure. It's really, yeah,
You worry that
Yeah.
another massacre could happen?
sure. I think it could. It may not be for the same reason, but you know, things can happen. Mhm. I mean, just like the virus we have going now, you know, well, that was something we wish could have been avoided, but we had to suffer through that. So it's the way I feel about it.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Find your favorite recipes, celebrity interviews, uplifting stories, shop our favorite deals at
Greetings, family. So for those of you who tuned in, thank you so much for hanging on. You know, we just wanted to, again, pay homage to our Goon and also those who are alive. I think sometimes we forget about that. We forget about our elders in our family, some of us, you know, and the things that they actually suffered through. This is the reason why we cannot ignore the trauma that our people have experienced. This is very important. This is the reason why therapy is so important for us as a people, because that trauma has been passed down generation after generation for centuries. And we see in modern day time that we still suffer from what has occurred to us as a people in this country. This is the reason why it blows my mind how a fellow African in America could ever tell their own people to get over what has happened. Okay, what has happened hasn't gotten over because we still as a people suffer psychologically, okay, from slavery. And some people do not understand that. Okay, and it's because we've been cut off from our culture. We've been cut off from our spirituality. Okay, we've been cut off from our way of life as a people. This is the reason why we don't look at each other as family. This is the reason why I'll never forget, I was at a market in South Florida, and a brother who owned the store asked this other brother, fellow African brother, is that your family? And he said no. And I looked at him, I said, I'm not. I said, didn't all of our people come from Africa? Weren't they dropped off in Haiti? Weren't they dropped off in Jamaica? Weren't they dropped off in the Bahamas? And as well as dropped off in the United States? So family, when I teach what I'm teaching, I'm telling you, family, I teach from experience, not from what I heard somebody else say, from my own personal experiences. Okay, listening to people renounce their culture, renounce their own people. Okay, but embrace Eurocentric ideologies and culture and reject themselves. And some of us to date are afraid, just like you hear our elders in this video, some of us to date are afraid to embrace who and what we are, because we are afraid of what the repercussions is going to be, because we speak out against the injustices that happen, or we rebel against, okay, the oppression and discrimination of our people. We must never forget, every year on this date, we're going to do the same thing. Okay, we must never forget our ancestors. We must continue to call out their name. When we pour libations, that's what we're doing. We're giving honor to our ancestors. They are part of us. We are them, and they are us. We are one, and us as a people are one. My mission is to restore our people back to our traditional greatness. My mission is to see us love each other again. My mission is to see us unified once again. My mission is to hear some of us talk our language again, and some of us embrace our culture again, and us to be proud of who and what we are and where we come from. We must reconnect. We must come together. Kiswahili, Nguvu Pamoja, stronger together. Peace and love again. Thank you so much for tuning in, family. I pray you have a blessed rest of your day and that your week will be the same. Friendly reminder, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we are no longer having those programs on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. My queen and I have too much going on with our businesses, okay, and us receiving our education as well. One lesson I've learned is you can't save anybody else if you can't save yourself. So we must get educated in order for us to educate. We must be economically empowered in order for us to economically empower. So we will not be on here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for at least approximately a month, okay? You can catch us on here, well, myself on here Tuesday and Thursday, or I'll come on here whenever I have time spontaneously for me to do some videos and be able to share some information with you. But remember, don't get so caught up in saving somebody else that you forget about yourself. Peace and love.